Hey guys, to 99 Everything with me, Jonathan Lau. And this is the podcast where we aim to maximize every dimension of our lives because for us, we want to live the best life possible. Today, we have a bit of an interesting kind of setting because this is our first online podcast because our guest is from Brisbane. He is an online coach, he is an ICN pro, he is also a personal trainer and he is also a full time manager. So he's got a lot of things on his plate. However, 6 years ago, our guest was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called Neuromyelitis Optica. And this condition pretty much the body attacks the spinal cord and the eyes. And there currently is no cure, So I wanted just to speak to our guest today and just get to know his journey, kind of going through this condition, and pretty much just get to know his mindset on how he's been able just to keep moving forward and stay positive throughout this whole process. So, without further ado, welcome to the podcast, An, aka Ansthetics.
Thanks, Jonathan. I think, it's a great opportunity. Just obviously share my story, but I'm really grateful and appreciative of the opportunity, and you're creating a platform for many of us to share a story and provide inspiration, provide insight, provide something. You know what I mean? I think all our stories sometimes need to be heard, and you're creating something, so it's very inspirational and motivational, mate. So well done.
Awesome, man. So, let's just get straight into it. What was kind of your upbringing like, and um, did you want to become? What is your actual role now, actually? And I guess what made you decide to move into the fitness space?
Yeah, so like I'll start from a bit of the beginning. My background's Vietnamese, so Nguyen is obviously the most typical surname. So I came from a family who were refugees. They came out of Vietnam. I had a family of my mum and dad and two older brothers when we grew up. And in terms of my family, they worked really hard. They provided us opportunity for us. Um, they actually own takeaway stores. So I know a lot of Vietnamese families might go into bakeries, all that type of thing. So they did convenience stores takeaway. So we learned about hard work when we were young. And my dad was actually into soccer. He watched a lot of sports when we were young, so we watched sports with him. And then for my eldest brothers, that kind of gradually, took me into sports and just being physical and healthy and just running around the yard and playing sports and stuff like that. So I think as I got older, primary reason why I kind of got into fitness was actually in high school. So in high school, I was really skinny. So I'm at the moment about 6'1", and I weigh about 93 kilos. And probably about year 11, year 12, I was probably about 5'10". So still pretty tall for around that age. But I was like 60, 62, 63 kilos, man. So I played like rugby league. That was my sport back then. And I used to get thrown around. I used to get thrown around like a rag doll. And I was just like, I need to get bigger. And one of my eldest brothers was actually into the gym. So after high school, I decided to go, hey, I want to join a gym. I need you to show me the fundamentals and get me started. So I think it was like 17, 18, I got to the gym, I started training, and I was getting results. And that was just not through any dieting whatsoever or anything like that. And then it kind of led me to study, actually, back in about 12 years ago. I did a Bachelor of Applied Science at QT, but I was more interested in the training side. Like I was really into that because I was getting results for myself and helping others. So I got a certificate in personal training. That was in 2012. And then it kind of led me to, kind of decide where I was going to go with my career at that point. And I was a bit undecided. So I actually got a job at Apple. So I've been there for almost 10 years. I'm a manager at Apple as well, full time. And a lot of the skill sets, one of the biggest companies in the world, Jonathan. So it teaches you a lot of skill sets in terms of living life. And that's probably a lot of things I've utilized with, especially with my coaching now and everything like that. But if I kind of think about the fitness and where it led me, like being a personal trainer back then, I was really interested in personal development and getting bigger, stronger, leaner. I think back in around that 2012 era, there used to be a music festival called Stereosonic. And it used to happen kind of every December. It was like summer. So it was almost like if you weren't competing, it was almost like the next thing to competing, right? You would shred for stereo. So 2012, 2013, 2014, I used to shred for stereo. So I had this kind of ability to, prep myself, get in shape. And then in 2015, it was kind of funny because my brother was actually a bit overweight in 2014, and I kind of helped guide him get in shape. And he was actually in the best shape he's ever been. He had abs and everything like that. And in 2015, we were just like, hey, we like this. We're getting some results. Let's help others. So we launched our own PT business called Shred Living. That's on my shirt right now. So that business caters more for fitness groups, and he has it like we have our own studio to support like those fitness classes, and we do one-on-one PT sometimes, just depending on where available. And then for me, that year in 2015, we decided to compete to build a reputation for our business. So my brother and I competed in the IMBA Brisbane Classic. We both competed in men's physique. So he did the novice class, I did the open. And we actually won both our classes. It was probably one of the first times, I think one of the first times in history that I know of that two brothers had won their divisions. Um, and then I won my open class, led me to win my overall title in that first competition, which I was really grateful for. And then that same year, I competed again in a pro qualifier. So top three got their pro cards, and I came second. So I became like basically a men's physique pro by my second show. In that time, IMBA was transitioning to ICN the next year transition. So I changed over to that. And then by probably at 2017, that's when I decided to launch my own online coaching business, which is called Ansthetics, which has happened in 2017, but kind of 2016 roll it in. And obviously a few things that have happened in my life that kind of changed the course of where I am now.
Yeah, awesome, man. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things in there. So, yeah, I would also consider Stereosonic probably the biggest amateur bodybuilding show in Sydney. Oh,
Yeah.
well, just in general in Australia. And even now, I feel like Ziz was the one who kind of like propagated that
Yeah, yeah.
culture.
Hmm.
And even now, we just had a little hardstyle event like last night called Epic. Like, I'm not into
Yep.
that stuff anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
even the kids these days will get cut and ripped for music festivals, and it's
Mm,
look, it's really cool. It's like if that's what's going to motivate you to get in shape, then so be it, right? And you
mm.
know that definitely played a role in me trying to get bigger too. Just
Yep.
just wanting to be shredded for a music festival.
Yeah.
But no, that's awesome. So it's not easy to to win a show in the first place, but to become a
Yeah,
pro
yeah, yeah.
is another thing.
Yep.
Um, what was that kind of process like? Just were you getting coached by anyone? Because also back in that day, well, like competing was going around, but yeah, what was that process like? Just going through competing the first couple of times.
Yeah, so I didn't have a coach. I coached myself. And those were probably one of the things that like if I do decide to compete again, which I do have aspirations to, I definitely would have a coach because I think about the mental side now, and especially with all the responsibility I have in my life now as compared to 6 years ago, it's a lot different. But I think through the process, like I said, shredding for stereo, even though it sounds like a silly thing, it still gave me something. It gave me an ability to trial and error with a lot of things in my life. And I think that's what life is about sometimes. You do have to try things and you might make a mistake, but you learn from it. You won't do it again, but you get better from it. You know what I mean? So all that shredding for stereo, man, I'll be honest, open and honest with you, it led to me to competing, and I coached myself. And I think once I did the 2015 show, the first show I did, and I won the overall title, it validated everything that I was doing was on the right path. And then I just had this focus and tunnel vision. So that show was originally in May in 2015, and then by October, that 6 months later, that was the pro qualifier. So I decided to do that pro qualifier. I had this goal, had this focus, and I just would do whatever it took to get to there. And I coached myself again, and I actually got in better shape for that show. And I'll let you now know as well, Jonathan. During that year, so at the start of the year, um, my wife and I decided to book a trip to Japan, probably about 6 weeks before the second show. So I was prepping and I was dieting in Japan for 2 weeks, so that commitment. So I really did whatever it took to be in the best shape. And when I was in Japan, I found the foods. I actually found like um, these chicken breasts. They were vacuum sealed in like the 7-Elevens, and I'd have them in my backpack in a cold pack, and I'll just eat them for lunch all the time. I was doing an hour cardio every day. I'd still go to the gym. I got my friend's pass. He lives in Japan, so I made it happen, and then I did that, and I don't know. I think for me, it was just like I had this focus. So I learned a lot through the first prep that I did. And I did that for probably about a 5 week prep. I mean, sorry, 5 month prep. And then that last one, I was already in shape. So I kind of reverse dieted it in. And then I gave myself probably about a good 3 months to just get in shape. So it was such a good learn. I got to compete again in 2017 as a pro, but this was after I was diagnosed with my condition. And I'll be honest, I learned a lot about that one because I will probably would say that I was probably a bit overconfident and I was rusty as well. Because if you haven't done for something for such a long time, you're kind of like a bit rusty, and I just didn't give myself enough time. So I wasn't in the best shape. I did my pro debut in 2017 in Melbourne. I came sixth, but this is at a pro level, so I'm still proud of that. But I definitely have this urge, if I stay healthy, to potentially do it again in maybe 2024, 2025, Jonathan. So yeah.
I found myself when I was dieting, and I had a coach too, like this
Mm,
last season.
yeah.
Um, I thought was lean, but he didn't think I was lean enough. So
Yeah.
how did you kind of gauge the difference between like your, I guess, subjectively how you looked versus objectively?
Um, it's a good question. I'd say I had role models, but they were role models at the IFBB Mr. Olympia level. You know what I mean? So I think Phil Heath is one of my biggest inspirations, a seven-time Mr. Olympia. I think back then Jeremy Bendia was dominating the men's physique as well. So I think for me, when I watched videos on YouTube, so YouTube was obviously out by that time, so there was a lot of like footage you could look to. So I think all the years I shredded for stereo, I got leaner and leaner, but I wasn't at that comp level. So I knew that I probably needed a few weeks extra just to push, you know what I mean? So I knew that. So I gave myself that time. But I think I compared myself to the people I saw on YouTube, my inspirations, and I compared myself, and I would take bits and pieces of what they did in terms of their posing, the way they spoke, but also even the way they did their prep. Just little bits and pieces I'll pick out, and then I'll go, yep, that I can align with that one there, and I'll pick and choose, and I added it kind of my style of prep. So I think that's how I did it. There's no right or wrong about it because sometimes you have a coach and they'll kind of validate and verify everything you're doing. But I think I knew by that time, probably the first show, about I think 4 weeks out, I knew I was ready because I could see these veins just coming through my abdominal chest area. I've never been this lean before. And then, one of these things, I don't know if you did it during your prep, Jonathan, but I started looking at the other competitors. I'm a type of person, I find anything and I'll use it as motivation. So I actually looked at so in 2015, I looked at the last year's winner of the men's physique show, and I was comparing myself to him. So I was using his physique, whatever he was doing, as motivation right there and then. And I'm like, I'm going to get leaner than him. I'm going to get in better condition than him. So I use that as my motivation. But I think it's through all these things that I use in my head. And you watch like the Last Dance, Michael Jordan, and you just when you watch that documentary and you see the way he motivates himself, he's always going to find it. So I think I utilize a little bit of that.
Not everyone can do what you did though, because well, some people hire a coach for accountability, for I
Mm,
guess guidance, for knowledge, and you kind of did that all for yourself. So like
yeah,
kudos to you because yeah, like especially if you're going away, it's very easy to like when you're in Japan, it's very easy to be like, oh, I'm overseas, so I should enjoy myself, right? But somehow it seemed like this goal of yours just was greater than these things. What was like the reason? Like besides just wanting to get shredded, like what was the reason for wanting to push so hard?
I think for the first show, the reason was to build our business. So it was to compete and see where it took us. And then I think I knew that I was in with a chance when I was, yeah, 4 weeks out. I was in really good, like, I've never been this lean before. Then I just pushed and I was just like, never been this conditioned before. And then even I had this like body fat test, and then even the lady that did it, she's like, "You're the leanest person that's done this, for a long time." So that you're hearing that's validation, but I still didn't know what my competition was going to be like. Um, and then even in saying so, like I think you got to realize like what your why is. So when once I did that first show about the business and I won that first show, like that first open class, I knew at that moment I was going to win the overall. I just knew it. I just had this confidence within myself. I was going to win the overall title. For the second show, it was probably the motivation was to get that pro card, to build the reputation even for myself and all for the business as well. So that was motivation. So I think in everything we do, there's always a why, right? There's always a why behind it, but you've got to use it as your motivation and you've got to push. And I've understood now through the years of coaching others that not everyone is at the same level. It's just the reality of what it is, though. But you can only inspire and provide those tools for a lot, especially my clients now. But I think for me myself, building that reputation, becoming a pro, and then in that third show that I did as a pro, it was to obviously see where I was at as a pro, and then I know that I wasn't at that top level. I was disappointed because Jonathan, when I compete, I try to win. I'm not there to, I'm not there just to make numbers. I'm there to win. So I was disappointed, but I knew there was a lot of factors that were in play, so I still had to celebrate. I was still really proud of what I did because there was a lot of things. Obviously, I was diagnosed with my condition, so that's already heavy enough. And there was also other things at work. I was pushing for a promotion, which I got a promotion. So there was just so many things. But in life, man, you just got to make the most of it. You got to 99 it, like you always say.
Most definitely, man.
Mm.
Maybe we'll just talk about like I guess the elephant in the room, like the reason why
Yeah.
your story is so unique is you were diagnosed with a autoimmune condition. Um,
Hmm.
how old were you when this happened? And I guess what was that whole process like? Because you're like to kind of give some context. You are in the best shape of your life. You're a personal trainer. You're healthy. Like health is a very integral part of like who you are, plus your business and everything it is, everything around
Yeah.
it. And then to be hit by something like that, yeah, it'd be really interesting to know like what was your like thoughts on it at that time.
Yeah, man, it's yeah, I actually love like telling this story because I think it's made me who I am. So in 2016, so this is actually coming off the year I competed. So I did the two shows. I was running on cloud nine, I was on top of the world. I was like, okay, what's next? You know what I mean? So 2016, at the end of January, was the day I got really sick. So I actually woke up one day, Jonathan, and I had double vision. So I was literally seeing two of the same thing on top of each other, which is bloody scary. Um, and I didn't know what was going on. So it was stupid of me. I actually went to work that day. They sent me home straight away because I knew I wasn't right. I had like headaches. I was not 100%. And I went straight to the doctor. The doctor at the time didn't know what was going on. They said, oh, maybe it's really bad migraines, can affect your vision. So just rest, take this medication. 2 days, it's still not happening. Maybe come see us or go to the hospital. 2 days later, I was still seeing double vision and I actually got more sick. So I went to the hospital, and I actually saw like an eye specialist, an ophthalmologist. They were doing tests on my eyes and they could actually see. So I actually had this other symptoms where I tried to look up and my eyes would literally just roll back. So my central nervous system was playing up. Something was going on right there, which was terrifying. Um, Got me sent to an MRI, and they found, so like you shared before about my condition, it effectively the good cells in your body attacks your nerves in my eyes or spinal cord, and there was like tiny lesions in terms of my nerves in my eyes, which caused it. So they basically put me on medication, like steroid medication, to reduce the inflammation. That was in like early Jan, sorry, early Feb. Um, 2 weeks passed and my double vision went away, and I was hoping, okay, that's all going to be good. But during that time, they did blood tests. They did what's called a lumbar puncture. So a lumbar puncture is when they insert a needle into your spinal cord and they get the fluid and they test it, which is bloody scary. It was one of the scariest things of my life. And then probably about a week later, I started losing vision in my right eye. So it was very blurry. couldn't see, and I was like, okay, I have to go back into the hospital. And when I went back in, by that time they had the tests, so they knew what was going on. So that's when they told me, yeah, I was diagnosed with this condition called neuromyelitis optica. So this condition, just to share with everyone, it affects probably about 500 people in Australia. It's really rare. It's probably like a brother and sister to like multiple sclerosis. So if you heard of multiple sclerosis, it's very similar. But the attacks that can happen, relapses, that can be really severe. So worst case scenario is you definitely can die for it over time, but you can lose your vision, you can go blind, or you can be paralyzed, you can't walk again, and you can lose like the ability to use your bowels. So you have to, have to be supported and be cared for. Um, and then after I was diagnosed, in that moment, the first question I asked was, "Can I live a normal life?" And at that time, the doctor couldn't answer. He said, "I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know what will happen." And it's funny, he actually said, "Can you just Google the condition?" Which you shouldn't have done. Yeah, that's my doctor then. And I Googled it. And when you Google like your symptoms or your condition, it's like the worst case scenario. And then in that moment, man, all these thoughts were flashing through my head. My wife wasn't with me at that time, so I called her and she was just like, she left work, she came straight to me. Yeah, we just dealt with this uncertainty right there and then. So at that time, I just had to take my time to really kind of go through the feelings of that. Um, and I just did notice uncertainty, but by that time they knew what was going on. They gave me the correct treatment, so the medication, and then my vision slowly came back on my right eye. But I have lost I'd say about 40% of the color in the right eye. So that's probably one of the impacts it's had. Um, from that point on, I kind of moved on. And then 2 months later, only other symptoms I've really had majorly was I had tingling down my legs for about 2 weeks, just unexplained, just tingling, wouldn't go away, especially if I walked fast or went for a jog or anything like that. It would just like flare up and a tingle. And it felt like kind of pins and needles in a way, similar. Um, but I think as months wore on and I kind of lived life and, that was the worst of it. Um, you start to just take it day by day as well. So in that moment, there's so much uncertainty. So I just kind of had to I didn't know if I had accepted it right there and then, but I was just trying to move forward. I was trying to, and probably I'll be honest, I was probably in denial a little bit of this because I was like, okay, I can do this. I started going to the gym probably about maybe 3 to 4 months after. So I was going back to the gym. I started going back to work. I was resuming life. But I'll tell you one thing that, if I kind of look back and I think, we talk about a lot of mental health things now, and it's more open out in the open. Probably about 6 years ago, it started trickling through, but I definitely had anxiety and all these things, but I just never had it before whatsoever. So I didn't know what it was. So I was definitely dealing with anxiety of the uncertainty because that was the life I was living. Um, yeah, and that was probably the first 2 years, Jonathan. It was hard. It was difficult. And I'm still living it now. But there's a stage where I kind of thought to myself, I had to accept it. It probably took me about a year, I'd say. And I also just had to go, okay, I'm accepting what's right in front of me right now. I'm gonna live my life day by day because it's like anything in life. You can get hit by a car accident, it can happen, and you can die. So I had to stop thinking like something was going to happen, and I had to think about progressing forward. So it definitely took a bit of time, Jonathan, and I still have those moments. I'm not going to lie, but yeah, that's kind of the mindset I was in during that time.
Was there a certain flip for you? Because like, yeah, it's I I think the definition or one of the definitions of anxiety is just like you said, uncertainty about the future or like
Mm,
not able to put into action what you can kind of predict in a way, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, was there a point where you, I guess, maybe got sick of feeling the certain anxiety, and then you were like, "I'm just gonna start living life day to day"? Was there a trigger point?
Yeah, I'd say once I started getting back into the gym and working, the gym definitely really helped me because that was the thing that I was so successful at the year prior, and I was still driven to go back to the gym. That was one of the questions. Like once I got diagnosed, I also asked them. can I go to the gym? And they're like, look, you can try. It's not going to impact, so why not give it a go and see where it goes? Because they told me that you can try these things. We don't know, but we just don't know what's going to happen. So I think once I started getting back into the gym and starting to set goals, and actually, so that year in 2016, my wife and I, we were planning a US trip, but once I got sick, I was like, nah, we're not going to do it. But then probably 2 weeks prior before we went in June, I said, let's do it. Let's just like life is short. I've obviously, been diagnosed with this condition, so life is short. So let's make the most of it. And I went on that trip, and we went around to like Las Vegas, LA, San Fran, New York, and we went to a music festival called EDC over there. So that was one of our like me and my wife's goals. We love our music festivals, so we always have this little bucket list. So we were able to tick that off. And once I started training, I got a little bit in shape. I wasn't in the best shape, but after I came back and I felt all right, I was happy, obviously, from the holiday. I was on this high. So I started training again, pretty consistent. And I think once I get in consistent training and like what the gym can do for you, that flipped and I'm like, yep, you know what I'm going to do? If I can stay healthy for the rest of 2016, I'm going to compete in 2017. So I set a goal for myself, which I did. So I set that goal to compete in 2017. But I think the gym, this fitness, this health, it gives you so much. And when you're in it, that was probably a bit of a flip to answer your question.
Awesome, man. Um, yeah, I went to EDC in 2019 too, so it's crazy. I think
Magical, hey?
yeah, but I think my body definitely paid for it for not sleeping like for 3 days. um,
Yeah.
but something really interesting is this is just my perception of it. So
Mm,
fitness is, if you've done a prep, fitness becomes kind of predictable. Like you know that if you do this and this and this and this, like if you diet, if you train, if you take your steps, you do your cardio, you will get from here to here.
yeah.
And I feel like that's a very like it's like an anchor in a way for people or anyone who does fitness. It's like no matter what is going on in life, if you just do these things, you're going to get to your goal eventually. And it like correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like that played a role in helping you like stay grounded in some way because not only were you good at it previously, but it's like you could also um, rest on the idea that if you just kept training, you could still improve or progress in some way, while maybe your body was regressing. Yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're totally right because like once you get in a groove and you build momentum, and once I started training again, I just felt that feeling again. You have those endorphins, you have that feeling, and once I had that feeling, that momentum, then I'm a type of person, as you can probably hear, I love to set goals, and I actually used my condition as motivation because I knew that I was the only one that'd be competing as a pro that had autoimmune condition, right? I didn't tell anyone about it. I just did it because I did it for myself, and that was probably the big motivation. Um, to answer your question, a few ones because that was probably the big motivation. I wanted to compete and to prove to myself that living with this condition, I could compete as a pro, which I did, and I achieved that. Um, and yeah, I don't know, like it was just this thing that feeling again, that spurring in that moment. But the prep was difficult because I was still dealing with this condition, and like just to share with you, and obviously the audience as well, like with my condition in terms of my treatment, I have to get like monthly blood tests. So I get monthly blood tests, and they basically try to see if there's a cell that returns into my body, and then if it comes back, I have to take this medication called rituximab. So what rituximab does is suppresses that immune system, a part of your body that should protect you. But what that does at the same time, it makes you immunocompromised because it's weakening your immune system. So I tend to get sick really easily, and if I'm sick for a long time, so I actually learned in 2017. I got sick a few times, and I was just like, "What's going on? Why am I getting sick?" So I didn't know about that too. So there was a lot of things I didn't. I probably should have researched in hindsight about the medication and ask more questions about what it does. Because it definitely had an impact during that prep. I was sick, but there were so many other things, you know what I mean? So I was just kind of, but I pushed through to really get there. So yeah.
Yeah, so on a prep, you you will also be more immunocompromised just because you're eating
Mm,
less, you're training way
yeah,
harder. Recovery might be a bit messed up because like your hormones, it's just being at such a low body fat, your body's all out of whack, you know. So
yeah.
yeah, it's definitely a bit of a handicap, like actually just prepping while you're unwell, you know. I know you said you felt like disappointed in a way because you didn't like win it, which is I love it. That's like a competitor's mindset. But at the same time, um, how did you feel knowing that you got there despite that?
I think like the weeks lead, like when you do the prep and you go through, I think the last like 6 weeks, I just knew I was a bit behind. So, and then it was just stressful because at that time I was pushing as hard as possible. And then at that time I was, working full time and I was pushing for this role. So I had these two massive things weighing on my shoulders. But that's life. Sometimes those things happen, and I was pushing, so I knew as I got into the show, I was going to be proud no matter what happened. So by that time, I kind of knew 6 weeks out, I wasn't going to be in the same condition or the same condition I expect myself to be. So when I won the pro show, I was in the best shape of my life. So I was almost there. I probably need another 2 weeks, I'd say, just to get there. But I think once I stepped on stage and I did the show, just this feeling like I don't know how to describe it. It's euphoric. It was probably the same feeling when I won the overall title that first time when I put that trophy up, and just that natural euphoric feeling. So I was so grateful and just so happy and proud of how far I've come. Um, and it was funny because I was talking to other competitors, and this is the thing about competing, right? Is this negative side that they were just so disappointed that they didn't win. And I'm like, let's just like, yeah, I just said to them, like, just celebrate what you've done. You're in the best shape of your life and let's go enjoy a pizza. Let's just live life now. So I think I had perspective because I've been through the lows, right? But I've also seen the highs. So I have an ability, Jonathan, to see things when, you're at your lowest, but I also have the ability to see it when you're healthy and you're capable of doing things. So I think that's my gift to myself, and that's what's happened to myself. And that's why I think sometimes in life, we always say the good and bad, but sometimes it's just a balance of things. If you see what this is and you actually understand both sides, it's just a reality of what it is. And if you understand there's reasons to get you there. So I have this gift to see perspective, which is, a blessing, and I see that as my gift as well, the perspective.
I 100% agree. Like just labeling it is it's actually a bit inaccurate sometimes, right? Like
Mm,
let's use like the example of if it's raining for us who wants to go to the beach, it's bad, but for a farmer, it's good, right? And in the same way, when you get on that stage, and if you don't win, you can be like, I didn't win, I didn't get first place medal, or become a pro.
yeah,
But it's also like you just push through 16 weeks of dieting while balancing like work life, like relationships. Like it's still a win. Like it can't be not a win unless you, I guess, cheated yourself, right? So
yeah,
I guess your condition also gives you like it gives you an even deeper perspective because like losing a show is nothing like having an autoimmune disease, you know, like like yeah, it's just interesting because I agree. Like when I competed, some competitors like it'd be the end of the world for them. But
mm,
if if they really, it's an interesting one. It's like if you really go through real hardship, but that's also a relative, right? But if you go through real hardship, like a prep is not that hard. It's voluntary discomfort, but it's nothing that's going to affect you once you've finished. You know, so yeah, it's cool that you've now looked at, I guess, view your condition with like such positivity, like it's a gift. I think that is really powerful, and it's only going to help those with similar autoimmune conditions feel more not alone in a way, or like feel like it's possible to do certain things. You know.
yeah. I think for me, like, coming off that kind of year, and also like the last few years, had a lot of health challenges, but I really want to raise awareness about the condition. Not just also the condition, but also like being immunocompromised. Because what you said before was like people see me as this perception as a healthy person because I look fit, but I've got this condition that inside that you can't see, right? You know what I mean? So they see this and then they see a person that's sick. So, I had to fight my battles in terms of having this almost like this imposter syndrome because, I saw myself as this healthy person, but I also had to accept I had this condition. So you had this almost this identity trying to find what it is. And I'm still probably searching for it in a way, but it definitely took me time. But like I said, man, yeah, perspective, if you change it and see it in a way, because I wouldn't change anything in the world, Jonathan. Like it's 100% made me who I am. It's given me so many blessings. Like in terms of life, I got to compete as a pro, all that things. But my personal life, man, I got married last year. I've got a home. I became a manager at Apple. It took me like literally from when I got diagnosed as well. Just to share, I got promoted 3 times to become a manager. So I was doing everything, like you said, to 100% to 99. I was doing everything I possibly could with what I had. And I think that's, what I try to preach and share with my clients or who people I speak to, that life is what it is. And I have the ability to go, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. You can't do anything without your health, right? So be grateful for that. Do what you can to protect that, to build upon that. And then a lot of other things will happen. So I think that's a lot of the lessons I've learned in the last 6 years.
Yeah, this whole podcast is about a holistic approach to life, right? And also like maximizing it in a holistic way. And
Mm,
they all play a role with each other, but I think you cannot skip health because we're literally in human bodies, right? We're physical beings. If you don't have your health, you can't do the things that you set out to do. Like outside of prep, like the like being like because to be able to be promoted, you must be doing very well at work. You must be doing things that other people aren't doing, and that requires energy. And if you don't have a baseline of health, you cannot push to that level.
mm,
And then also in your relationships, to have the emotional and mental capacity to
mm.
communicate with your partner. Like if you don't have health, because if you're really sick all the time or really like you don't feel good all the time, you're always just going to be thinking about yourself. So to actually have the capacity to like think about others, to care about others, that takes a lot of energy too. And for in your case, you got to think about not just your family, you got to think about your clients. You have like a lot of people that you need to care for. So um, yeah, if you don't maximize these elements in your life, it's like I guess this will come to the next question. It's like some people, when diagnosed with something like this, they go into deep depression and
Mm.
or like just
Yeah,
downward spiral in life.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think like it's appropriate, like maybe initially, because it hits you hard, right? But what do you think helped you not continue to be in that downward spiral? And I guess continue to try and like fight harder work, continue to like do a prep, like because a lot of people will also make use this as an excuse, right? Like, why did you
Yeah.
not use this as an excuse?
Um, I I think one thing I definitely didn't want to do was I didn't want to use my condition as an excuse, as to play the victim, to use it as a vulnerability. It is a vulnerability, but it is to a degree, and I had to understand what that degree was and what I was capable of doing. I do say for the like, it's not for everyone. When they are living with a chronic disease or anything like that, circumstances can be very difficult depending on what it might be. I was just blessed enough to go through some really challenging health events in the last 6 years. But there's always been time. My life has been really like a roller coaster. So it's been up and downs, but sometimes life is like that. But when I'm at my highs, I'm so grateful, man. I just like love life and I love the people. I've a lot, the support network, coaching, gym, fitness, health, everything. So like even just to share a bit of a story this year, the last 12 months of my life probably have been probably more challenging than when I got diagnosed with my autoimmune condition. So last year in November, I basically had this lump on my back called a lipoma, and I went to a GP to get it removed. And when I got it removed, I had basically complications. So I had to go to the hospital, and I ended up having surgery on my left side, on my back where my lats are. And that was a 3 month recovery due to like a mistake a doctor made when they did the surgery. So I had to have like actually had 3 surgeries within 3 weeks in November last year, 3 month recovery. And then in May till probably about September, I got sick with, wasn't COVID, very similar. I had shortness of breath, really weak, and I was sick for basically 4 months straight. At my worst, I could barely walk around the house, Jonathan, and I was out of breath, and I had to sit down, and my chest was just like pumping, and I was struggling to breathe, and that was probably the scariest because it wasn't related to my condition, it was just bloody scary. And then I think it's some virus or something like that that hit me so hard. So when I went through the lows during that time, and I couldn't gym, like that was the longest I haven't gym for. So in that last 12 months, I've probably been able to gym probably maybe about 2.5 to 3 months. So you know what that can have an impact if you're consistently training, you're goal driven. Um, and I had to really pivot just my mindset. Um, and I've understood over the last 6 years that trauma in life, you have to go through it. And I think, like, I read a lot about chronic diseases. I read about all the other people that are struggling. So I kind of listened to stories through podcasts, and I tried to get their stories and align with the way they felt. And a lot of the message that was coming across was about trauma and how you can use it as a growth opportunity. So we hear in this day and age about PTSD, post-trauma stress disorder, a lot of the time, right? But there's actually this other thing called PTG, which is called post-trauma growth. So there's actually sometimes you can have the ability to do that. And I want to utilize, the trauma that I was going through as a period to grow. So during my time, I was really sick in May to September. I had to pivot a lot of the stuff I did to gym towards my mental health. So listen to a lot of podcasts, a lot of meditation, a lot of breathing, a lot of things to really control my mind, to really, say there's anxiety for thoughts and stuff like that, they're not real, and to actually focus on breathing in one thing. And that was probably one of the most powerful tools that I do have now, and I can kind of apply it to other things in life.
Awesome, man. Just curious, did you ever try cold showers or ice baths?
Yes, yes, I did. Yeah,
Mm,
well, I did when I was I wanted to do like cold showers when I was sick because I was like I needed to like and like but my wife was like don't do it because you're sick. And then I think as I got better, then I started, yeah. And because what it does, right, it puts your body in that state where you have to control, breathe, and really because when you hit the coldest temperature, your body just panics a bit. You know what I mean? So to be able to control your mind and breathing, super powerful, so powerful.
yeah, because I was just thinking, like, based off your just little experience there, if I couldn't gym, what other kind of uh, activity would I put myself in to try to like
Mm,
train, like, guess, resiliency? Because
yep.
the gym's powerful because like you don't have to be there. You're pushing yourself to the limits, but and you overcome it, and that's a very gratifying feeling. But when you don't have the gym, it's it's either like you say meditation, um, and the only one I can think of now is like a cold shower or ice bath. It's just being able to not give up and just like hold strong and just like be present in a way. So yeah, just that was just something I thought of, and it's cool you were actually doing it. What other, I guess, practices that did you apply, just in general, like just throughout that whole immunocompromised period that you find has been helpful in just keeping you mentally strong?
I think sometimes in the moments where you feel a little bit of doubt about yourself and whatever, but it's really just pausing in those moments and understanding what's real and what's not. Um, so you have to have the self-awareness within yourself to do that. But I think during the tough times, like a lot of things that helped me was even I'll be open and honest, like I had a counselor I spoke to every fortnight. So just to share my emotions, share how I felt, just a vent. It's someone I didn't know. I was unbiased. But my support network. So it could be your wife, your partner, your friends and family. So I spoke to them during the tough times too, and just spoke about the present, and just spoke about sometimes you talk about the future and uncertainty, but that's not going to really help you. So my support network, and then, what I mean? Like, once you kind of pause at that moment, you just remind yourself of all the great things you have. So being gratitude goes such a long way. And we spoke about perspective and being have a positive mindset towards a lot of things. But sometimes when you're in your lows, it's hard to see what you have. But you actually just have to pause for a second and really remind yourself of that. So I think that continued approach with a lot of combination of things that really helped me through the tough times. But ultimately, man, if you think about it, it's having your own self awareness and being able to share that with others, with a counselor, with your loved ones, and then even sometimes just talking to yourself and just going, that self talk. Sometimes I do that a lot more now, and just saying, hey, that thought isn't real. Turn that around. You're strong. Like that type of thing. It actually can help as well.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. It sounds like, just from what I extrapolated, the main things were like gratitude, being grateful for what you have,
Mm,
having a very healthy, I guess, strong support network. Like, like you can't do this alone. You can't do life alone. You gotta have the right
no.
people around you. And the third one was self talk. Right, just self talk is massive because there's always going to be periods where we don't have people around, and how you speak to yourself is going to play a really big role in if you're going to empower yourself or going to victimize yourself, right? I was
Yeah.
just listening to something on the way here. It was really cool. This guy's name is Wes Watson. Like he's got
Yeah.
a crazy mindset. I'd really recommend
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
Um, he says that when he's dieting, instead of saying "I'm so hungry," which is a very like powerless kind of powerless speech, he'll say,
Mm,
"This is what fat loss feels like. This is what fat burning feels like." And it's like
yeah.
when you say it like that, it's like it gives you power over the sensation, and I think it's very underrated. Like previous guests, I've had most of the guests have told me like they talk to themselves too, and people will
Yeah,
be
yeah.
like, "That like, you're crazy," but it's not like like a schizo way. It's more like a how can we encourage ourselves and like almost rewrite the script that goes on in our brain because when things
Mm.
get really tough, it's going to be like negative, 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 and if we let that come in, that's when the spiral happens, right? So by saying things like "I'm strong, I can do it, I'm capable," it's like you're fighting that thing. And if you say it enough and you keep doing these things, like obviously
Yeah.
speech and action have to come together. When you do these things together, like I think it's just a recipe for success.
It's just so powerful, man. I think like you can train your mind to do different things if you put your mind to it, you know what I mean? So you're totally right. When those doubts or those negative thoughts come into play, you just have to, and I think it's a big thing about self-awareness and having the ability to be aware when you have those thoughts and to be able to actually stop or reflect on why you do feel those ways, and then creating some actions within yourself in your mind to change that. So, like I said, it could be self talk, it could be talking to a loved one, it could be, that gratitude or doing what you need to do, meditate, breathing to change that a little bit. So, if you create actions that can really help you get rid of that negativity, that's going to, build that longevity in terms of positive mindset.
Most definitely, most definitely. Cool, man. So we'll switch up a little bit. So
Yeah.
you do online coaching. You're
Yeah.
you run a personal training business, and you're a full time manager at Apple.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips? First of all, how do you juggle that? And then the follow up question is: do you have any tips for people who struggle with, I guess, because I think a big component of that will be time management, but just any
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
tips you have for people who are feeling overwhelmed by things in their life? Like, how do you manage all that?
Well, with the business that I have with my brother, so we share the load of that. So we just create a structure in terms of what we need to do. So I do a lot more of the social media content, and I drive that. I do a lot of the admin type of stuff. And then that business is kind of like, I guess it's just gone a bit smaller. So it's more focusing on like fitness sessions and group sessions. So my brother would organize that. So it's a little bit easier. But I'd say my online coaching business has grown, especially in the last probably 3 to 4 years. Um, I'd say juggling full time work and online coaching and all these things, like you said, time management is so important. I think you have to, like anything in life, you have to plan out your weeks, plan out your days, plan out your long term, so you have your calendar set in terms of what you need to do. But I generally have I almost basically have a list of things I need to do in terms of what I have in my calendar, but I list what's priority. So if you understand in that moment what needs to be done, maybe in that day or within that week, those are the priority things. And sometimes we can think a bit too far ahead and we get distracted. I'd say the biggest thing, and I think a lot of people can agree with me right now, is having focus is going to allow you to get there. But there's so many distractions out there, Jonathan, as you know, so you can procrastinate. So procrastination is one that can distract you, but you have to have focus. So, if you have a plan for anything, like in life, if you fail to plan, you're obviously going to probably most likely fail. But if you have a plan in terms of your business and your priorities that you need to do to organize that, that's probably the thing I live by. That's helped me so much. And even in my role as a manager, I have to be very organized with my time. I have basically my plans for my weeks, like for the next 3 months. You know what I mean? So it's probably similar in terms of my online coaching. And I think the biggest thing I do is I try to keep it as consistent as possible. When I was unhealthy and when I was sick, it was pretty challenging. But the consistency in terms of your content online and all those things is super important. And kind of go from there.
I want to like dive deeper into that. So like practically, what do you do to like set your calendar? Like do you use Google Calendar?
I use like the Apple one. So it's
Oh,
similar.
iCalendar. Yeah, cool,
Yeah,
cool.
iCalendar. So it's
Yeah.
similar in terms of format. And then I also have a application. Apple has one called Reminder, but I use this one. It's a third party one called Things. So Things will basically set what's priority for the week, and it will organize it. So when you add something in, it will ask you what date you want to get done by, and then it will remind you. So that tool's super powerful. That's one of my previous managers shared that with me, and that allows me to kind of plan that structure. But I have to have a focus to keep that organized. So each at the end of every week, I ensure my week ahead is planned, and if I have the time, I will look, weeks ahead of that too. So, but I learned in life that sometimes things can change quite quickly, especially with my health. So I've learned to kind of sometimes live a bit more in the moment. So I plan my weeks ahead and stuff like that. But I know that sometimes things can change. So I've learned to deal with a bit of the ambiguity of things that can change a little bit more, especially with work and then online coaching. But I think I've created just a business model that's consistent, that I have a plan and I stick to. That works for me at the moment. I love to grow the online business a little bit more with juggling the full time work, but there's a balance of that, and I think I've started to find it, but there's always room for improvement.
I think when people perceive like planning, the people might think, oh, that's like so not spontaneous, right? But the thing is, planning is what allows you to be spontaneous because it gives you the framework where you can work around it. So and I look at like macros the same way. It's like by having the set plan of macros, now you can be more
Mm,
flexible with it rather than having no plan. And like if you have no plan, a lot of time can be wasted. And if you have no like macro plan, you can like eat and overeat, right? So
yeah.
like planning is just so crucial. Um,
Mm.
what do you in terms of the focus part? Um, what strategies do you use to stay focused and get stuff done?
Um, I would say I always allocate time to, like when I need to do things. So within that time frame, I give myself that time to do it. But if I don't meet that deadline, that's on me. You know what I mean? So I think once you have your time once you have your plan in place, you have that time to do that. So you're more than, whereas if you're kind of just going bit by bit and you're trying to pick up pieces, that's where it feels overwhelming because you're trying to do things on the fly and everything like that. But once you have a structure in place, and like you said with the macro thing, you can be a bit flexible with it and you can change things. So if you didn't finish this in time, you go, okay, where's a time slot on Wednesday or that I have an hour so I can finish that off and then I'll finish this bit off. So it's been really having that mindset of flexibility and just really going, okay, I can't finish this now. What can I do within this time frame? And really being really focused within that time. But I think for me, I need to do something, I generally just put on maybe a podcast or something in the background, a white noise, so I can just really focus in on it, and that allows me just to hone in. And sometimes like I have lo-fi music or a podcast. Those are the probably two big triggers for me. I'm like, okay, it's work time or focus time, and I try to go to a place where I don't get distracted. So I live with my wife, but sometimes you will have a chat, but I just tell her I'm like, I need this hour or I need this time to do this. So give me the time. And then even at work, the biggest thing at work is you always get distracted. So if I need to get work done, I just go to an area where I'm not going to get distracted.
It sounds like a lot of it is just like setting your environment and just
Yeah,
um, back to what you said, just plugging in the calendar because it's not in the calendar, it doesn't exist, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty simple, man. Like it's the simplicity of it. So sometimes people can overthink these things, but the reality of it, if you create a plan for yourself, and here's the thing: every online coach or anyone has a different way of doing things. But if you find something that really works for you and you stick to it, that works for you. But then you continuously improve on it. You reflect and everything like that. But it's just creating really simple actions that you will move forward with.
Hmm. So what specifically with the online coaching do you have to plan for? Because I'm guessing you do that after hours, and then is that just like allocating time to check in with clients and like go through like meal plans and diet plans? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, generally, so generally for me, in terms of my online coaching, I always do like a kind of challenge every 3 months, so every season change. So obviously the new year will be kicking in. So right now, I'm getting in terms of applicants for clients that want to work with myself. But I think generally, yeah, after work, I would allocate time, and then on my days off, so I create a plan in terms of my day. And I actually watched I watched King Richard, so like the Serena Williams and Venus Williams, that movie recently, and I what resonated with me was he taught his kids at an early age to think of the next day what their plan was, and that was so enlightening because as a child, you never really get told, well, what do you want to do tomorrow? What's your plan? If you have that at an early age, and I think I had to learn that skill. And but when I saw that, I was like, having a plan in place or having waking up for a purpose that gives you ability. So that planning part is so important. Like, I just think it just gives you the ability to go, okay, I need to do this tomorrow. And that's my goal.
I like how you tie it into purpose because if you kind of live like with no plan, it's very hard to be aligned with anything. You're just kind of wafting in a way, you know. Hmm, really cool. What do you think was the biggest lesson you took from um, once being diagnosed with this disease? Like, what do you think has been the biggest lesson for you?
I think the biggest lesson is to, yeah, definitely appreciate life. You only have one life, and at the biggest thing that I've learned is, like I said before, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. So, being gratitude for that. And like I said, I've been able to really live two sides of life. Live at the lowest when you're really sick and you can't do the things you love, and then also be healthy and do the things you enjoy. So I've seen two of the spectrums there. So I have an ability to understand that perspective. So that's probably the biggest lesson. Like before that, I was doing the preps and health was important, but I saw health in such a different way because I wasn't able to do the things I couldn't do.
What would you say to people who? So there's gonna I can think of two people, two different types of people who will um, make a rebuttal to that. It's like, oh, that's never gonna happen to me. First of all, they're gonna say that, and the second
Yeah.
one is like, it's like everyone knows they should be healthy, but because it's because it's not taken away from them, it's just not serious about it. Like, do you have a message to like those people? It's like, because everyone knows we shouldn't smoke, but they still smoke, right? People still smoke. People know they shouldn't eat McDonald's every day, but people still do it. Like, I
Yeah.
think there's knowledge, understanding it logically, but to really um, internalize it is another thing. Is there any like advice you give or any message you'd give to people to get them from that level to like this is serious, like this is your health? Like, is there a message you can give?
I think it's simple. Just don't wait for something significant to happen in your life that will affect your health, because in those, yeah, you don't want it to ever to get to that point. I think I had just a classic story or example of that was probably about 4 years ago. I had an employee, and he was like quite obese. He was probably about over, just let's just say he was over 120 kilos. And he was, and he was talking to me about being healthy and like what he needed to do. And I gave him the advice, but no matter, every time I, talked to him, it was the same thing over and over again. And then I think I had one conversation with him, and I said, you don't want to go into a hospital to have a heart attack, to have that, to realize you want to be proactive before that happens. You don't want to be reactive. But I think it stems from, education, upbringing. Like that's the reason why. Like if we're not educated about the importance of health and exercise, and especially as a family, like if our family raises and yeah, we're eating unhealthy foods, we're not exercising, so that's going to be the things you're going to grow up with, and that's probably a reason why maybe those people are the way they are. So I think a lot to do with is education, because you think about the root cause of it from when they were young, that they only knew that way, they didn't know it that way. So they were eating unhealthy, they were gaining all this weight, they weren't exercising, weren't doing anything about it. So it's really hard to change that. But I think, my message is just don't wait for that moment that something significant can happen to make you realize.
I 100% agree with you, but I just know there's people who still won't get it. Yeah, and okay, I guess this will come into the next question. It's like working as an online coach now. I would say most of your clients are either trying to lose fat or gain muscle,
Hmm.
and I would both are difficult, but I think a lot of people struggle with the weight loss side of it. What do you commonly or consistently see is the things that people like their blocks, like they keep not they're not able to get past this, like, is there something that you tend to see often through your experience as an online coach?
Yeah, I think the most common theme is how important it is to you. What, like, I think for us, it's basically a part of our lives. Exercising, eating well, it's ingrained in our lives. But when a person joins for the first time doing a challenge, or being coached for the first time, it's not really a part of their life yet. They might have the motivation to push for it, but they need to go through life, go through the diet, go through the training to understand how important it is to them. So I think the way I coach and what I've learned over the years is really catering towards the client in terms of their lifestyle. And I'd say probably the biggest blockers really is being time poor, not making it a priority, you know what I mean? Because what we spoke about, your last question there, if the health part isn't as important to you, it's not going to be a priority, so you won't make it a part of your life. So, and there's some clients that they get it, they just do it because they know it's going to be best for their health. They have a goal. But I also see you have to understand why they're doing it. And if their why isn't important enough, they won't do it. But if it's important enough, they will do it.
Mm. And do you regularly have to kind of like probe and like get into the real why? Because I I've just started as an online coach too,
Yeah, yeah.
and I from what I see is people will just say like more of the surface level things like, oh, I just want to lose
Mm,
weight, but I think there's always a deeper why, and the deeper why is if you can really understand that, that's where the catalyst for change can really be. Like for you, it's like I'm not strong enough to be dominant in rugby. That's the switch I need to get stronger or like get bigger. How do you normally uncover that in someone who only is like, oh, I just want to lose weight, but I don't know why?
Like you said, I think it's just asking more questions. But sometimes, as we know, some clients going to give surface level answers, and probably as you coach them over a period of time, the more you go through the journey with them, the more questions you ask, you'll probably uncover that as it goes. So you might not get it at the first, at the first meeting or first check-in or whatever, but maybe 6 weeks in, you'll discover that. So I think my method of coaching when I do check-ins, I apply it a lot more in terms of coaching questions. So I try to get my client to understand. I asked three questions, very simple. What was your successes this week? What was your challenges? What would you do differently? Because that does, it allows them to reassess within themselves what was successful, what were the challenges, and what they would do. Because once they understand what the challenges are, they go, okay, I need to work on that. But they need to uncover that. But if they're not able to share that, that's when you kind of know if a client's not fully in it. And you can only provide them so much. You know what I mean? You can only provide so much because the reality of it is their goal. You create the plan for them, but you can support them as much as you can. But if they don't, not motivated to push through that why, yeah, that's one of the things. So you're always going to have your learns, and you're always going to have your clients that are really 100% committed. But I think in those moments you can't get frustrated because they're probably just not ready in that moment. But yeah, I have other clients. So just celebrating the ones that do really well and just learning through probably the harder ones.
Mm, very, very valuable. It was a bit choppy. I hope the listeners could hear that because that was really,
Yeah,
really
yeah,
good. Um, but like a big aspect of that is just like you almost help, they have to you're helping them find the answers for themselves.
yeah. That's what coaching is really. You know what I mean? Like if you think about anyone's goal, it's their goal, not your goal.
Mm,
I've been coaching for since like properly coaching since 2017. Been doing a little bit before that, PTing and stuff like that, but proper online coaching. And I learned a lot about myself in those first few years because, as you know, you've spoken to me, I had this mindset of winning all the time, but I really had to understand and drop it down a notch that all my clients weren't the same. You know what I mean? So their goals were different. They might want to lose weight. And some of the ones that like I've coached to compete. Um, I had the classic example earlier this year. I thought their goal was to be in the top three, but as we went through the prep, I understood that maybe their goal was to step on stage, and that was their win. That was their trophy. You know what I mean? So I had to take a bit of what my goal is off and actually listen to them. And the more you listen, the key of active listening and all these skills, you can uncover a lot more, and just by asking the right questions.
I guess another aspect of 99 everything that I wanted to discuss is I guess the business slash financial side. So that you didn't have to start a separate business. You could have just done the 9 to 5. What kind of what are I guess your general business goals or fitness goals? Oh, sorry, not business and financial goals in the future. And what made you even want to run like all these things? Because you could just finish work and just watch Netflix. Why even do all these things?
Well, I definitely think that I already know that my passion is fitness and bodybuilding and the gym. So it's been such a part of my life, and it's helped grow me. And once I competed, I got my pro card. I really wanted to help others. That was just who I was, and I do it at work every day through similar thing with managing people. Um, and once I decided to open the online coaching business, I didn't even have a second thought. It was just something I wanted to do because I just wanted to see where it could take me. I think obviously some of the health issues that I have just kind of stunted a bit of that growth. So I think in the next 5 years, I'd love to grow the online business. I think with my current role, I still enjoy it because a part of my role that I do is I do coach people, but in a different way. So I think I coach all the time, and I absolutely love coaching. So I think my passion point is helping others, might not just through fitness, just through their career growth. So I enjoy helping people achieve their goals. Um, yeah, I think that's it. Just simplicity of it.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I guess you're,
Yeah.
you're a true and tried coach.
Pretty much, brother. It's taking a bit of time, and I'm still learning to master it as well.
Awesome, man. And look, if there's anyone who is looking for an online coach, and I guess even this personal training in Brisbane, where can they find you? And I guess also follow your journey. If someone is going through the same autoimmune disease or a similar autoimmune disease, where can they find you?
Yeah, so on Instagram, my fitness page is Ansthetics underscore. So that's basically my online coaching. So you will see the stories in terms of my transformation with my clients and some obviously my bodybuilding stuff as well. But I will be posting a lot more just about the condition and educating and just some of the challenges I go through. But I also do have Shred Living as well. So that's my brother's business with myself. And we have that page. So that's all on Instagram. We also have a Facebook page as well. So search us on there.
Awesome, man. And just to wrap up, we have the final question, which is
Yeah.
why do you think 99ing everything is important to you?
Like I said before, Jonathan, life is short, or life can be, it can be long, but sometimes you only have one life. And I've been able to see the two different perspectives of it. And when you're healthy, be grateful, push hard, be motivated, give your all. So, and that could be with whatever goal it might be for yourself, though. But I think life is an opportunity, and we just have to grab it and make the most of it.
So well said, man. And I think there's no better person to say that than someone who's actually had their health taken from them. It's very easy for someone like me who, for the most part, is very healthy, and to like get people to like exercise and do things. But when
Yeah.
you've actually experienced it like viscerally, like going to hospital, losing your vision, like when these things are actually taken away from you, and you now and you're able to just continue to live, and now you have an opportunity to tell people, it's like I would be so passionate. I'd be like you have two good eyes. Like, why would you
Yeah.
not take care of it? So no, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
awesome, man. And I hope people can really learn from your journey, because there's people that just make the worst excuses, and they don't even have half the struggles that someone like yourself are going through. So yeah, thanks again for coming on the podcast. And for the rest of the listeners, if you want to keep following Arn's journey, yeah, check out his Instagram. And if you like the podcast, please give us a rating on Spotify or a like or comments on YouTube. But yeah, thanks again, Arn, and peace out, guys.
Thanks, Jonathan. Peace out, brother.